Hello cultists, this is Helios, and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. Today I have something a little bit different than my usual content, and that's a discussion over possible changes that can make Billy more fun/viable to play or learn. Now keep in mind, most of these changes I have in mind I thought of with behavior in mind, and what I mean by that is that I only thought of changes that I could actually envision behavior doing. So obviously removing overheat isn't necessarily on the table. But add-on changes and possible base kit changes besides overheat are what I'm going to be talking about today. Now to start off, we're going to be talking about base kit Billy at his most basic form, so if you're already an experienced Billy player, feel free to skip to the timestamp on screen now. Base kit Billy is a 115 movement speed killer, just like most of the cast, except he has another movement option with his chainsaw. Base kit charge time is 2.5 seconds, and then you break into a chainsaw sprint, and if you collide with the survivor, you will instantly put them into the dying state. While charging your chainsaw, you move at 3.68 meters per second, whereas survivors move at 4 meters per second, making you slightly slower while revving your chainsaw. While in your chainsaw sprint, you increase in speed to 9.2 meters per second, which is exactly double or 200% default movement speed. If Billy runs into an object with his chainsaw, he will bump into the object and then he will be stunned for 3 seconds. This 3-second cooldown also applies if he misses a chainsaw or hits a survivor with his chainsaw. Current Hillbilly also has an overheat mechanic. As you use your chainsaw, a bar will fill up around the chainsaw icon. Once it reaches full, you will overheat and your chainsaw will go into cooldown. You will then be unable to use your chainsaw until it comes back. Now that we know the basics of Billy and what his base kit entails, let's start with possible base kit changes. Base kit Billy is pretty weak because 200% movement speed, though it sounds like a lot, is pretty easy to dodge at any range that isn't a back rev. This makes one of the strongest aspects of Billy, curving, very hard to pull off against good survivors. This means that most Hillbillies will run one or two of the engravings add-ons, which increase your movement speed while in your chainsaw. Death engravings increases your speed by 15%, and Doom engravings increase your speed by 20%, but these add-ons also have drawbacks. Both add-ons increase your charge time by 12%. This fact alone makes Hillbilly extremely add-on reliant in order to be viable against better survivors. It also makes him harder to get into because of how punishing base kit Billy is. So my proposed change would be to make Death Engravings base kit with a flat 15% increase to his base kit movement speed without the charge time penalty. To compensate for this huge buff, I don't think it's unreasonable to remove Death Engravings, but I do think we should keep Doom Engravings add-ons so that people who still want the double engravings feel can still run the add-on. This way they will have an extra add-on slot to use elsewhere and they won't have to run 2 engravings. Now on to the add-on changes. Since we know they're not going to revert the overheat change, I figured it would help to have an add-on to at least alleviate it and make Billy not only more bearable to play, but also easier to get into. So, my potential idea was to add another muffler add-on similar to the punctured muffler. For those of you who don't know what the punctured muffler does, it increases your rate of cooling by 20%, which basically just means that your overheat goes away quicker. This add-on is already great on its own, but adding another muffler add-on that instead of increasing your rate of cooling removes a percentage of your overheat upon a down with your chainsaw would make Billy not only funner to play for veterans, but also easier to get into for beginners. It would encourage beginners to learn how to use the chainsaw and give veterans a reward for putting in the time to master it. The numbers that I suggested are shown above. Upon hitting a survivor with your chainsaw, remove 50% of your current accumulated heat on your chainsaw. This would allow good Billies to snowball more effectively and apply pressure, and newer Billies to learn the killer without it being a headache. Another add-on that I think needs some looking at is all the add-ons that require you to be overheated. I think these add-ons are kind of redundant, as if you are overheated, the effects of these add-ons give you little to no compensation for the lack of power that you have while you're overheated. The effects of these add-ons range from completely useless to so incredibly weak that it might as well not exist at all. These add-ons being Big Buckle and Pig House Gloves. Big Buckle reduces your tear radius by 8 meters while you're overheated, which is completely useless. Pig House Gloves in theory sounds good, as it increases your action speed when kicking generators, pallets, and breakable walls, and decreases your pallet stun by 50%. However, this again requires you to be overheated, which completely defeats the purpose of using his power. You become an M1 killer with brutal strength and enduring in an add-on, which frankly isn't strong at all and not nearly enough compensation for having to be overheated. So, to change these add-ons, I want to step away from the overheat mechanic side of things and give them entirely new effects. For Big Buckle, I think it would be cool to have an add-on that increases your movement speed while revving your chainsaw, similar to Huntress's Shiny Pin add-on, which increases her movement speed while winding up her hatchet by 5%. I think a value like 4% would be fine for Billy, as that puts his speed while rubbing his chainsaw at 3.82%, which is still slower than Survivor's but fast enough that I would actually matter in loops. I think this would be a very interesting add-on and something that could potentially make his saw a little bit more scary on some tiles. As for Pig House Gloves, I think bringing back a cooldown add-on that decreases cooldown after a successful chainsaw hit would be a good addition. Maybe something like decreases successful chainsaw cooldown by 20%, just like old Thompson mix, but without the charge time increase. I don't think that Thompson mix all on its own was too oppressive. The only thing that really made it strong was the fact that it had cooldown and charge time in the same add-on. Adding a cooldown add-on wouldn't be too oppressive and reward good Billies with the ability to snowball more effectively. Another add-on I want to take a look at is Black Grease. This add-on increases the charge speed of the chainsaw by 18% for 30 seconds after being blinded. Believe it or not, I actually like the idea behind this add-on. It's a fun, gimmicky add-on that you can throw on when you see a bunch of flashlights in your lobby to use it against them. One change I think that would make it a little bit funner and more viable is to allow it to stack based on how long the flashlight is shining on you, and in turn, nerf its default value to compensate. Each stack would reset the timer, and it could stack up to let's say 3 times. So this is my proposed add-on change. Increases charge speed of the chainsaw by 8%, was 18%, for every 2 seconds a chainsaw is shining on you. This stacks up to a maximum of 24%. Do I think this would increase this add-on's usage? Probably not. But I do think that if it's going to be gimmicky, its gimmick might as well be viable when it can be used. The final add-on we're going to be looking at today is Heavy Clutch. For those of you who don't know, Heavy Clutch basically just decreases the collision zone of your chainsaw by 30%. In theory, this sounds like it would help out newer Billies, but in practice, it hurts you more than it helps you. So, I've been thinking about fun add-ons that change the way Billy plays without making him broken or annoying to play against. And I honestly think making the Heavy Clutch remove collision with objects, with the downside of making his chainsaw only do 1 health state, would be super fun to play against and super fun to use. It would be similar to hug teching with Blight, but weaker and with less maneuverability. To think of how you could use this add-on, if you were to run this add-on with my modified muffler add-on that I mentioned earlier, it would be the equivalent of a weaker version of Alchemist Ring on Blight. You could use your chainsaw to get the hit, and then instantly have all your overheat back to take the chase again. Anyway, those are just my ideas to make Billy a little bit more bearable to play, not only for veterans, but also make him easier to get into, and make him a little bit more viable. If you guys have any additions or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I stream live on Twitch every week, and if you want to drop by and know when I'm live, please join the Discord, it is down in the description. Or if you don't really feel like joining the Discord, I will start posting my schedules on Twitter as well, so if you want to, go on ahead and follow there. Anyway, cultists, that's it for me. It's been Helios. Peace out.